You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Bex Beltran, episode 114. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. I've made a decision for 2023. I am hosting 12 workshops in 12 months, and I've already mapped out the 12 topics while reserving the right to change them to something more aligning when the time comes. In preparation for these workshops, which I am so excited about, I created a map, kind of like a treasure map or a game board. And then I decided it would be fun as a coloring sheet, even though I am not someone who colors. I just like the idea of you and everyone else getting the map and using your own color and styles as you decorate it. So at the end of this episode, I will tell you more about the workshops and the map. But all of this to say, I also thought to myself, why wait until January to start? Do some workshops now. So in November, we had the benefits and downsides of journaling. And in December, we had the resistance workshop. And I thought I wanted to use the outline for the resistance workshop as a podcast episode also. But then I thought, no, I already have a few episodes about resistance on this podcast, so I don't want to repeat myself. And then when I thought about that statement, that sentence, I want to, but I already have it and I don't need to repeat myself, I realized how wrong I was. I follow a number of my favorite teachers who talk about one topic or a few topics over and over again for years. Obviously, they repeat themselves, and I love it. I love hearing the repetitions. I love the examples told in different ways and hearing the familiar information that I heard from them before, but having told to me again. And this is a little off topic, but I think this is so funny. So this week I've also been working on my end of year wrap up, and I am reviewing the entire past year. And of course, this past year has been a new year for me, for all of us. 2022 was not a repeat of the previous 2 years. So of course, there is no repetition there at all. It is a new year. It is new information. I had new experiences that I had never had before. So of course, this is all new, no repetition. But then when I re-listened to my previous 2 years end-of-year wrap-ups, I realized there was so much repetition. There were so many patterns. There was so much familiarity, and my mind forgot about all of it. That really showed me I could even record the same episode word for word that I did 3 years ago, and I wouldn't recognize and remember it, and you might not recognize and remember it. So next week, I am sharing my 2022 end-of-year wrap-up on this podcast for you to listen to for the first time. And if you want to hear the previous 2 years wrap-ups, I will share those links in the show notes for this episode at bexb.org/reboot. That's REBOOT. Back to today's topic though. All of that internal discussion about repeating myself and not remembering was me overcoming my resistance to doing another full episode just about resistance. So here we go. Let's call it a reboot, a resistance reboot. Today, let's go over the broad basics. What is resistance? How to notice it, and then of course, the reason that we're all here and listening and talking about it, how to release resistance. In the most basic, recognizable form, resistance is when you say a sentence to yourself along the lines of, I want to, but that is basically the structure. It doesn't have to have that exact words or be in that exact form. You can substitute, I wish I could, but, or everyone else says this is great, and It doesn't matter how you construct it, but one part of the phrase is something that you want, that's good, that's for me, I would like it, I could have that. And then the other part of the phrase is the reason why it's not good for you. You can't have it, you couldn't go for it, it won't work. And I do have a few disclaimers and exclusions to tell you about. The first disclaimer is when it is not actually resistance, because it is not something that you actually want. If you get a weird little blip on your radar of something that you consider for a moment, and then you realize, no, that is not for me at all. If that wish or hint or desire never comes back again, and you never feel any kind of tension, then that's it. You're done. Your disinterest and you declining it is probably not resistance. It was probably just a one-off suggestion or option or offer, and your brain considered it for a moment, and then you thought, no, that's not for me. So that's not resistance. For example, if someone invites you to a party and you think, oh, that'd be nice, and then you remember, oh, you already have plans, even better plans, and you say, oh, I can't go. In your mind, you're thinking, I don't want to go. That's not resistance. There isn't any tension around it. You're not bringing it up and replaying it. It's not causing you any stress or worry. You're not spending any energy on it. You just thank them for the invitation. You are happy for them. You do like parties. And you easily say, no thank you, and done. Story complete, no resistance. The other thing that resistance is not, so here's the second exclusion or disclaimer, is when it is a healthy, self-protective fear. And I am using the word fear here, but sometimes fear gets a bad rap, right? Sometimes we use fear when maybe we should be using resistance. And I don't want to get into the whole semantics, but what I am not talking about in this episode is when your primal instinct is actually protecting you from something dangerous. If a stranger in a van has offered you candy and you want that candy, you like that candy, but you have heard that it is not safe to get candy from strangers, your hesitation and decision not to move forward is not resistance, okay? That is your primal instinct telling you, do not get in the van. We want to continue to listen to those instincts and follow those messages. It's really specific and personal, and it is situation-based, so of course I am not going to be able to tell you all of the examples of how primal instinct shows up for you. Instead, this is an invitation for you to really get to know your own intuition and your own instincts so that you can really feel, if you're really tuned into your body, when something is not good for you. Do not call that resistance, and don't try to release the resistance and walk into your own demise. Don't do that. I just really want to call that out. I am not supporting the idea of throwing caution to the wind and putting yourself into life-threatening situations. And speaking of intuition, I do want to talk about how you can notice resistance. I think there are internal and external methods. And now that we're talking about it, maybe you will be more curious or more in tune and more aware when resistance comes up. The internal method is just paying attention to and noticing your own thoughts and feelings. The thoughts are the sentences that loosely follow that construction that I gave you. I want to, but I wish I could, but people are suggesting this, and here's why it won't work for me. Whenever you have that kind of a tonal change in whatever you're talking about, ... maybe that's resistance. Notice that pattern. Notice that sentence structure. Listen to those thoughts, the sentences that you tell yourself. Notice the feeling that's associated with it. For the example of being invited to the party and already having plans and noticing the feeling associated with that, there would be no resistance. There would be no tension. There would be no tug or pull there, right? Because you can't go, and it's fine. It's very clean. There's no grasping. There's no pulling. It's all good. For the example, get into the van with the stranger with the candy, No, don't do that. That is dangerous. It's very clear. That is not resistance. That is your fear mechanism kicking in to protect you. Resistance is when it's like, I wish I could become an artist. I've always wanted to be an artist. I have tried a couple of different times in my life. I have, looked into it, but, I'm too old now. And I have this career. And I'm sure people would make fun of me. I would love to be an artist, but, what would people say? That is resistance. When you feel that tug and that tension, if it's been something that has popped up for you over time and you've pushed it down and then it pops up again and you push it down again, you might give yourself all the reasons why not. And they sound like very logical, helpful reasons, but really, if we just dig below the surface, we can see those reasons are not protecting you from danger. And those are not a clear-cut answer. Noticing those sentences, the thoughts, the feelings that come up, and noticing if you have any of that tension, any push and pull, or tugging and pulling, that's how you find the resistance that is holding you back. When you feel those tugs and pulls and tensions, those are clues that you might be feeling some resistance because of the sentences that you are telling yourself. Now for the external ways that you can find resistance. Of course, I am going to say journaling. You can use all sorts of prompts to pull it out of your brain and put it on paper so that you can see it externally from yourself. This is a really simple and basic and obvious prompt. You write this in your journal. It says, "What am I resisting right now?" Let your brain go inside and answer that question, and then write down the answer. Or ask yourself, what do I want that I haven't been going after? Okay, there you go. You're going to find some resistance right there. Why don't I have X yet? What am I resisting? Another way to ask resistance awareness questions would be, what have I always wanted to do and I haven't done it yet? Why? Oh, that'll bring up some things. Those are all examples of so many of the possible journaling methods to uncover and expose some resistance that you might be entertaining, shall we say. Another external way to notice your resistance is in your conversations. Maybe in talking with a friend, now that I have shared that sentence structure with you, now maybe you can hear different versions of I want to, but as you're talking with people, when you explain things to them. If you ever say, oh, I would have loved to be able to do that, but how often does that come up for you? How many times have you said some version of that sentence? Notice when you're talking with other people. Maybe you can have an accountability partner. And of course, this will surface if you have a resistance coach. This is my specialty. I can help you uncover your resistance that you might not even be aware that is holding you back. Those were some of the internal and external ways that you can recognize resistance that's holding you back from getting what you want for yourself in your life. And now let's talk about how to isolate and label it so that you can release it. By noticing resistance and by calling it out, by differentiating it from the primal fear and from something that's just not for you, when you really do notice that resistance, label it as such. Label it either internally to yourself, like, ooh, that's me, I'm resisting this thing that I do want. Or you can even say it to whoever you're talking with, like, oh, okay, that is my resistance. You just helped me find it, and I just realized right now that I am resisting this thing that I say that I want. Once you isolate that sentence or belief or thought and label it as resistance, now you have put yourself in a position that you can release it. There are a couple of different ways that you can release resistance, and the most direct way is to check to see if whatever you are telling yourself, whatever that resistance statement is 100% true. If it's 100% true, I will give it to you. But my guess is it is probably not 100% true. For example, if someone says, I've always wanted to become an artist, but, I am too old. It's just a fact, right? I am the current age that I am. That is a fact. You can see my birth certificate. That is 100% true. No, it is not a fact. That is resistance. I want to, but we've got the sentence structure. We see that it keeps coming up. They keep on bringing it up in different situations. It's been a constant sentence throughout many years in their life. There is some resistance to becoming an artist. The sentence that they're saying is, I'm too old. So what do we do once we've isolated that sentence and labeled it as resistance? We check to see if it's 100% true. Are you too old to become an artist? Has anyone your age ever become an artist? Well, we can imagine that, yeah, probably someone in that age range has become an artist. You could Google it, you could ask around, check with a museum, a librarian, or you could just let your imagination wander. Has anyone in that age ever become an artist? Probably yes. If that is possible, you know that sentence is not 100% true. Good. Now we know. Now, this might be the spot that another piece of resistance comes up. Okay, yes, I know I'm not too old. I'm just not good at learning things. Oh, okay. Now we have the second resistance sentence, right? I would want to become an artist, but I'm just not good at learning things. Okay. We have isolated that sentence. I am not good at learning things. We have labeled it as resistance, and now we can check to see if that statement is 100% true. Have you ever learned anything in your life? Have you learned how to walk? Have you learned how to use your phone, how to read? Have you learned how to listen to a podcast? If you have learned any of those things, you have learned things in your life. So the statement, I'm just not good at learning things, is not 100% true. That is how you isolate and label the resistance and then check to see if it's true. One of my favorite ways, another favorite way to release resistance is to mention the opposite. Just flip the sentence around and see if you could say the opposite out loud. So, I would love to become an artist. And I am finally old enough to do it. Oh, interesting. I flipped it from I am too old to I am finally old enough. What? How does that statement help? I finally have experience. I finally have time. The other distractions in my life have taken care of themselves. And so now I can devote my energy and attention to becoming an artist. I love taking whatever my resistance statement is and using the opposite version of it to see what comes up for me, to see what I notice, to see what part of the opposite statement is also true. Another way you can use the opposite is rephrase, reorder the sentence. Instead of, I would love to become an artist, but I'm too old, what if you reordered the sentence to say, I am old and I would love to become an artist? Does that change anything for you? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. It's just fun to play around with those words, to notice what your brain does and what ideas come up for you as you use the opposite order or words or meaning of the sentence that you are telling yourself as the reason why you cannot do something. Another thing to do is not fully release the resistance. Did you know you can still do something even with resistance? Sometimes the momentum of doing something is what helps to diminish the resistance. You might tell yourself, I've always wanted to become an artist, but really, I am too old. Okay, resistance isolated and acknowledged. You might not even try to release the resistance by going the opposite direction. Instead, you might just take an art class. Even though you're too old, you decide, let me just take a class. And by taking a class or watching a YouTube video about becoming an artist or buying an art book, those actions towards what you want, even with the resistance, could actually reduce the resistance. Your brain might think, well, I bought the book. I have the art supplies right here. I've watched the video. I went to the art store. Yeah, maybe I can do this. Maybe I'm not too old, right? You can do things even with resistance. Consider that as an option for yourself. Resistance doesn't have to stop you dead in your tracks. I have a few examples to see if these have come up in your life. You can substitute any of the words that I give if they don't apply to you. You can switch out the examples that I give with something that is relevant in your life. The sentence is, I've tried it before and it didn't work. If something keeps on coming up for you, I wish I could do this thing. I wish I could create this and try this or make this, whatever it is. And you did actually try it once, and it did not work. Just notice that statement. Even though it's not the exact I want to but formula that we've been talking about, this example is still resistance. If we fully elongate the implication of what that sentence is implying to us, if we further the narration of that sentence, what it is saying is, I want this thing, I tried this thing, it did not work, and therefore it will never work in the future. If it keeps on coming up for you, you still want it, and you're giving yourself the reason why you can't have it. You are not really believing that you can't have it because you keep bringing up that you do want it. So there is that push and pull there. What can you do with that sentence? Once you realize that you're telling yourself, because it didn't work one time, it will not work in the future, now you have isolated and labeled that as resistance. My resistance is telling me, because it didn't work one time, I know it will not work in the future. Now check, is that 100% true? Does the past 100% fully and exactly predict the future? No, we all know that. Can we say the opposite? Because I tried it before, it will work in the future. Oh, that's interesting, right? How is that statement true? Because I tried it before, I know what not to do next time. Because I tried it before, I already have one practice round under my belt and I can do it with more confidence or do it differently next time. Because I tried it before, I have more experience going into my next attempt. Let's do the reverse format of the sentence. I tried it before and it didn't work. And I want this thing. Ooh, what does that do for us now? Maybe it tells me I need to try a different way. Maybe it wasn't supposed to work the first time because I still want it. So maybe it's a 3 times the charm situation. I'll have 2 more failures and then 1 success. Or maybe I don't know how many failures I will have before I have my success, but I know that I want it, so I am going to keep going. So that is just one example of how you can overcome that resistance. I have some other sentences too. I will throw these out and you can use them as your homework if you want to take it on and walk yourself through this whole process. Remember, I am here to support you and help you if you need help. Maybe you've said to yourself, I want to change, but other people wouldn't like it, or other people would have something to say about it. Or I wish I could. I really do. I wish I could do this. But the truth is, I do not know how. Okay, that maybe is the easiest one to overcome. I will be curious if you agree with me about that. Maybe your example is like, I see everyone else doing it, but I know I can't. I can't do that. That is not in me. I see other people doing it, but I can't. What's your sentence about that you cannot have? Is it that you want to meet a partner? You want to date, even at your age? Is it that you want to leave a relationship? You want to finally be done with that friendship or a partnership or a job? Is it that you want to travel? But there's so many reasons, of course, why you cannot travel. Is it that you want to learn something or start something? You tell me. I am here to support you as your resistance coach. You can reach out to me in an email at hi@bexby.org. You can go to my website at bexby.org and see the link that says work with me. You can leave a comment in the show notes for this episode at bexby.org/reboot, REBOOT. And before we go today, I have more for you. At the start of this episode, I told you about the map or the game board of workshops for next year. You can always see everything that I have coming up at bexb.org/let's meet. And if you want to download and print off your own copy of the map, there is a link on the show notes for this episode at bexb.org/reboot. And the second thing is, I recorded an audio metaphor for you describing what resistance is like, using the beach as a metaphor. I loved thinking of it and visualizing it, so I decided to make a video version of it too. So if you just want the audio, keep listening. I will edit it in right after this. And if you want to hear it and see it, I am posting the video to the show notes for this episode at bexb.org/reboot. And I have sent you this video in your email if you're one of my favorite people and you're on my email list. So I'll say goodbye now. Talk to you next week with the end of year wrap up of 2022, which is in no way a repeat or familiar for 2021 or 2020. Spoiler alert, it is definitely a repeat. But yes, here's your resistance metaphor, and I will talk with you later. Bye-bye. Here's a metaphor for you to think about. Imagine that you are in a little shack or like a bus stop or picnic structure near a beach in a resort that you are invited to enjoy. This resort is lovely and has so many amenities that you enjoy and you want. So in order to get to the resort, you just need to leave the structure, walk through the sand and maybe wade a little part through the water. You'll be in the sun, or you could also call for a ride, and then you'll arrive at the resort and you can enjoy everything there. So you're standing in this little shack or structure, and your brain is telling you that sand looks too hot. I'll probably get sand in my toes if I try to walk across that way. I don't want to step in the water and get my slippers wet. A wave might come if I'm standing in the water and knock me down, and I'll get all my things wet. The sun is too bright. I don't have a hat. Ooh, it looks too far to walk. I'm not even sure that path that I'm looking towards is the most direct path. There might be a faster or different path. And yes, I could call for a ride, but then I might have to pay or I might have to tip. And what if I don't have exact change? And what if it's not what I expected? So you stay in the structure, looking at that resort and maybe telling yourself it's not for you. And this structure is fine. You're comfortable. You've got a concrete floor. You've got a little metal bench. It's all fine. Maybe you even make up stories about the people that you can see far off there in the resort, or the people who are making their way to the resort. Maybe you make up stories about why they can go and you can't, or why it's for them but not for you. This is resistance. All of those reasons that your brain offered you for not walking through the sand and stepping in the water or calling for the ride or enduring the blaze of the sun for the few minutes that it takes you to get over there, those are all the reasons that your brain is telling you that are keeping you from what you want, this enjoyable thing that you would love to experience. So think about your own life. What areas are like the resort? You can see it. You know you would enjoy it. You know how lovely it would be. What sentences are you saying that are keeping you from going towards it? The sun is hot. The sand is sandy. The water might pull you in. The ride might be too expensive. Those are all your resistant thoughts. Whatever sentences you're telling that are keeping you from going towards what you want, that's just your resistance. I can help you notice those resistant thoughts and work out a plan to overcome that resistance, to release your resistance. You know what I'm really good at? Asking questions, then listening to the answer and redirecting you if you didn't answer, then showing you your thoughts from how you answered. That is part of what coaching with me is like. I don't have an agenda for you. I don't think I know better than you. I do believe in you and your capacity. If you tell me what you want for yourself, I believe it. I can see it for you. I can show you the thoughts that are keeping you from getting what you want. Then you can drop those thoughts and go get what you want. Coaching really works. Come to my site at bexby.org/coaching and book a session with me. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, think about someone who you know who would love this episode and share it with them. There should be a share button on your app if you're listening to this on your phone. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at bexby.org to see how we can work together.